Hey everyone, good morning and welcome back to Freedom Harvest Farms. I'm of course Aislynn Campbell, and back behind the screen back there is my partner in crime, Joe Hilliard.
Good morning.
Hi everyone. Welcome back to the farm. As usual, we've got a lot of stuff going on out here because it's spring. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking this morning about the principles of regenerative agriculture. Now today I'm going to focus on one principle. But the reason why I felt I've been really focused on this recently is because over the last, I think it's been about 9 weeks now on the podcast, Joe and I do a podcast called Dinner Table Talks. And in January, after dealing with a lot of mental, physical, and spiritual health issues, I had to really look at my whole lifestyle. And one of the big things that made a change in my life was a focus on my gut that I was dealing with, leaky gut issues that were causing me to have autoimmune issues. And so working with a naturopath and working with the knowledge that I have about general health and immune systems and biology and how all that stuff tends to work together, I was transitioned into focusing on an elimination diet called autoimmune protocol diet. We spent about 7 weeks talking about that, and then we made a transition over the last couple of weeks into the discussion about agriculture. And of course we're going to discuss agriculture and a connection to the food that we eat, because you are what you eat, and that's an extremely important part of the way that I communicate everything in the world that I've lived in over the last 20 years.
We got there because one of the principles of the healing your gut is eating real food.
Nutrient-dense food.
There you go.
Right. And then to make that transition, to help people understand why nutrient-dense food isn't coming out of your grocery stores right now for the most part. And then how do we fix that problem? Because we're not the kind of people that are just doomsdayers. We want to talk about what are some of the problems, what can we do to fix those problems. And it made a real connection for me and really helped me get a better understanding of the value of the soil health as it relates to the body health. And so I want to spend a little bit of time over the next few weeks on this live. I'm of course want to show you around of what we're doing so that you have the day-to-day practical knowledge that you can use in your gardens every week. But at the same time, I want to spend a little bit more time talking about why, as it relates specifically to regenerative agriculture. Now, regenerative agriculture has 5 principles, and I put those 5 principles down in the information in the post. And I'm going to focus on the first one today, and that is armoring your soil. Now, I got a question asked to me about bringing in, and I always get this question because it's a part of our mentality. And if you even think back to our body health and even the pandemic, where we are more concerned with killing things than we are increasing the biodiversity, increasing life. And I got a question asked on my TikTok video yesterday when I posted about getting mulch drops, right? Getting chip drops, things like that. Oh, what about pests and diseases and things like that? What do you do about that? And the answer was regenerative agriculture and the principles of regenerative agriculture, but most people don't know what that means. Well, what it means is very simple to our body, is that we are creating healthy soil, we are creating a healthy body, we are creating a strong immune system, and with biodiversity, we are creating all types of things within our body, all types of things within the soil that help to create copacetic, an interconnectedness. The types of plants that we grow they help each other out. And I talk about this stuff week to week. There's nothing new here today. I'm not talking about anything that I'm not showing you on a regular basis. I just want to pare it down and talk specifically about soil health. This time of year, I did do a TikTok video about getting that chip drop. Once we get to April, the end of April, we're not going to want to put that kind of mulch in our gardens anymore. And that just has to do with the temperature and the heat, especially because a lot of times when you get a chip drop or a tree trimmer brings you a dump, they're going to bring you the freshest, greenest stuff that they just trimmed from a tree, that they just ground, right? So that's going to have, it's going to be still hot, just like you wouldn't want to use direct cow manure because it's still too hot, right? And as the temperatures in our gardens and in our air and in our soil starts to go up, it starts to get too hot for our flowers to turn to fruits, right? So we're trying as much as we can to keep the temperatures down. So we're only going to do that mulching up until the end of April. And then we're going to pick it back up again in November, and we're going to be able to mulch from November to April with easiness. Now, that's what I'm speaking about when I'm talking directly about bringing in something like a tree trim. But when you're talking about all of the types of other types of things you can do to armor your soil, now here's a way to armor the footpaths, right? You can see here that I have dropped down this morning as I was going through and weeding and harvesting leeks, and dropping in all of the weeds here, and dropping in all of the past materials that I have cut down from things as I've cleaned up my gardens. You've heard me talk about this as composting in place, but another way to see that is armoring your soil. Now, not only does it help with weeds, but it also helps to create the mycorrhizal fungi, the mycelium in the soil down here, and it also helps to create future soil that you can then use to lift up and put into your garden over here on the top of it. Now you can also see that I leave my my weeds growing over the top. You've seen me talk about that regularly. I go ahead and leave that because I always want to keep that soil armored. And then whenever I go in and do some weeding because I need to plant, I only weed to plant or to get really good for harvesting if I need to really get in there for harvesting, but immediately I go back in and put something new in. And I try to put things new that are going to cover the ground, that are going to grow tall, that are going to be all different types of biodiversity and shape. Now there's a couple of reasons we do that. One is because we want to maintain the life in the soil. We want to maintain the moisture in the soil. And we also want to create a more of a microclimate that creates a better, in the summertime, it's going to create a cooler climate around your garden. And in the wintertime, it's going to create a warmer climate around your garden. So you're manipulating the microclimate around your garden that's going to benefit your plants. In addition to that, when you have the heavy rains that come down, you know that we have that heavy rain, the velocity of the power of the pressure of the raindrops on the soil actually creates compaction. That compaction is worse than any other kind of compaction you can do. The driving on ground, walking on ground, heavy rain creates more compaction than anything else. And when you put plants on top, you actually slow the velocity of the rain that hits the soil. In addition to that, you actually hold moisture because there's roots and there's litter and there's all of these things down in the soil to help maintain that. And then in addition to that, you germinate all different types of plants that have the ability to bring different types of interconnectedness into the soil to help the soil learn to fight some of its own battles and to help each plant learn to fight its own battles. Now we're going to talk more about the different principles of regenerative agriculture in the future, but I just want to show you around and things that I'm doing right now during the spring as I'm getting ready, but looking at the armoring of the soil. This is all area that has been turned over at some point to become a garden. Once it was turned over to become a garden, I no longer do that anymore. I keep my soil covered. Over here on this side, I've got a farmscaping row of flowers. And then down here on my footpath where I want to create a walkthrough, some aesthetics, I've layered it with mulch, and I'm going to continually keep layering it with mulch. Now you can see over here where I have cleaned and planted. You can see that I've done my peppers. Look at this nice sized banana pepper I have going right there now. And you can see that I then have gone in and put in some other things that are going to start to pop up inside here. You're going to start to see radishes, you see sweet alyssum, other kinds of flowers, some lettuces and things like that. You're also going to see beans that'll start to pop up. See, because I've gone in and put some beans in here and some other types of zinnia flowers and some sunflowers and things like that. So you're seeing the coverage come up. I'm still leaving a lot of, you hear me talking about the companioning of perennials and annuals. Well, in your annual garden, you end up with a lot of bare spots because you have to go in and clean in order to put some plants in, right? But there's certain times of years that I want to just go ahead and let a lot of the perennials grow. In the summertime, it's really good to let the perennials grow because that keeps an armor over your soil, even if you're not harvesting anything and all you're doing is keeping your soil moist, keeping a lot of moisture in your soil.
So can I point something out?
Yes.
Come this way. I'm just looking at these two rows side by side, this row and then the next row over. Yeah. And I can visibly see the difference. You've clearly come in here and cleared out
Within the last couple weeks, yeah.
What likely looked like this,
yes,
or something close to it.
Just a week before, that's what it'll look like that in a week.
Okay, and then you're not worried about this one, because I think a problem, or not a problem, but a technique that a lot of people use is they get out into their garden, which may or may not be as large as the one we're looking at now, and they say, step 1, clear everything out.
Right.
Step 2, plant. And that's not how you're doing it. You're clearing out only the areas that you're planting, leaving this covered.
Yes. Yes.
Until you get to it.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
And we can keep going this way because as you're watching week to week, you're seeing me work right after the freeze, and then I've gone back and re-cleaned it in order to be able to harvest well, but then replanted stuff immediately. And I go back this way. Now I'm going back through cleaning again so that I can harvest. But then as I'm going through here, I'm cleaning and planting, right? But every time, even if I go to clean for harvest, I plant something because I never want any of that to be bare. But what ends up happening is it gives me these different succession rates of different types of vegetables to grow up. Some of it might be some thinning. Cleaning would be thinning some things. You do need to do a little bit of that, and you need to give space for things to be able to grow up and to get the sunshine that they need, but always put something else in the ground that can pop up afterwards.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
This row right here, the third one over, I can see the same thing. You've cleaned that up, but you haven't cleaned up from here over.
Well, it's just a matter of the fact that I had a lot more perennial flowers and things like that growing down
Didn't
here
need
on
to
this
yet.
end. Do what?
You didn't need that real estate.
I didn't need it, and,
Right.
and you'll find that I did some of that inside of there, but I put in bigger plants maybe inside of there that can maintain and stand that. I didn't need to. It was covered with onions, it was covered with cilantro, it was covered with yarrow, things that I actually
One more
want.
question. You've come through here clearly, and I can tell that you stopped right there. Was there a reason why you stopped right there?
I've got perennial flowers growing here.
Okay.
And, every once in a while I'll see, I missed this weed. Let me pull this out. One of the things I just learned, and you know that I love to share these new things. And as we talk more about regenerative agriculture, we'll talk more about how each plant actually helps the immune system of the soil, just like it helps the immune system of our bodies as well. And they pull up things. So you've heard me talk about nitrogen fixing plants like bluebonnets, like clover, all nitrogen fixing plants. Then you've heard me talk about calcium fixing plants like dandelions. Dandelions are calcium. They're deep miners. They go down and they draw calcium up. Well, these thistles that we pull out a lot of times, these prickly thistles, these are phosphorus. Now, you've maybe not heard me say that phosphorus is great for flowers. Flower phosphorus. You always need lots of phosphorus. When I make my soil mixture and I put my plant in and I put my stuff down inside there, I always put phosphorus so that I can put on lots of flowers. Besides the beautiful flowers I also want flowers to turn to fruit. More flowers on my tomatoes and peppers and eggplants means more fruit on my tomatoes and peppers and eggplants. So it's not terrible to have these. You just want to get them out before they start seeding everywhere and causing you a bunch of problems, right? Okay, so you can see how I've worked this way. Now, over the weeks, you've heard me say this area is not planted yet. That area over there. So this area wasn't planted yet, and I just came in over the last week and started working on this section, and you can see I left some radishes that were already in there, but then I went ahead and put in some peppers. I left some leeks that were already in there, put in another pepper, put in a few more things down there.
And I guess these sunflowers you've left behind on this row are all strategic?
Yes, I'm going to leave them there. Some of them are going to be nice, big-headed sunflowers. Some of them are going to be the weeds, kind of like what's over here. But what's going to happen is over the summer, over the heat, as heat starts to set in, I start to now create shade. I'm creating shade that comes over. So not only shade for the soil, armor that soil, but also shade for my plants to keep the temperature down just a little bit so that I can produce fruit and vegetables a little bit longer than any of those flat farmers that don't have any kind
Rather than full sun in our South Texas summers. Got it.
Over here I'm putting in my, what do you call these things? Squash, peppers, all of this kind of stuff. So you saw that this was all armored just like this. So as I go by, I don't just want to go in there so a lot of times what ends up happening is everybody wants it to be really clean, right? They want their gardens to be so clean. So every season they go in and they tear everything up and they start from new. I'm going to show you how a garden that starts like that every year is never going to be as successful in production, in issues with pests. The more pests you have, the more sprays you put, the more things you kill. And this is how we end up with not healthy soil and not healthy bodies as well. So I'm just leaving this until I'm ready to go in and
this
start
doesn't
cleaning.
intimidate you. This doesn't, you're not
Absolutely
fearful
not.
of
This is beautiful.
the
Look
work
how
ahead of you.
beautiful it is. No, it's easy. And if I need a little bit, like eventually when you first get started doing this, you're going to have harder soil because of no coverage. That soil is going to be compacted by the rain, okay? But as each season goes by, after 3 years, I can go down these rows and just pop, trim, plant, and then go on. I did 4 rows in one day. And I'm very meticulous about it. Got my headphones in, listening to Corey Ten Boom, and just doing my little stuff and planting basil and planting flowers and all kinds
In the
of
meantime,
stuff.
this looks pretty.
Exactly.
I mean, this looks like a nice, not weedy.
Flower bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing over here. This is nice. So when we get ready to be done with this, we'll just mow it down and leave all this stuff laying down. All this is armor that goes down and it becomes litter on top of the soil.
It's almost like weed management by controlling which weeds you put where you want them.
Right. And here's the thing. Where on planet Earth is there bare soil naturally?
Naturally, nowhere.
Nowhere. And so not even on the bottom of the ocean. There is no places that it is bare. That's not how the earth works. So what we're doing is we're creating ourselves problems every time we turn up new soil and leave it bare. Okay? So as quickly as I can, I want to, after I build a new garden, I want to begin getting this planted. I want it to be covered with mulch in the footpaths. I want random plants that came up in the middle. I call them volunteers squash. I want them to have the ability to grow wherever they want to grow, because there's all kinds of things growing on out here. Number one, sun is going to be more pressure on this soil. It's going to kill things faster. It's hotter over here. Number two, the rain's going to come down harder. It's going to compact this soil more. Number three, I have lots more pest pressure and wind pressure. The wind comes through and blows this stuff over. And you can see that some of my plants are having a little bit of a more challenging time. It's great to come down here and see this one. See how beat up this little pepper plant is compared to the ones that I planted over in the other gardens? It literally looks different, right?
That looks like wind to me.
That's exactly what it is. So, and all of this stuff was planted last weekend. A week ago, I planted these 2 beds and more stuff in those beds.
What is this?
That's a bean.
Now that's going to be a cover crop, correct?
Yes. And so then in here, basically but here's the thing, because I'm an annual vegetable producer and I'm very meticulous about the way I do it, I'm just increasing my own yield because, I'm creating a cover crop to cover my soil, but I'm also creating a bean that I can harvest and eat.
Well, let me clarify. This will cover the soil quickly.
Yes.
Not that you planted it as just a cover crop out of production.
Yes, and so will the radishes. And so I just go ahead and keep putting on radishes. This time of year, you can keep putting on 28-day, 25-day radishes, the French breakfast and the little red ones. They're great food, even if you don't eat them all and you feed some of them to your animals. But they're also great low coverage and they're great tillers for the soil. So they're actually going to help keep the life in the soil. So keep planting radishes even if you don't eat a ton of radishes, because they're really good at helping to cover up the soil as well. And you see, look, how much I'm trying to cover the soil. This is my 3 sisters bed with the corn and the beans and the squash, okay? Wind pressure's so hard on corn, right? But I'm doing everything I can to get ground coverage, to cover this ground as quickly as possible, to keep that hard rain. When the hard rain starts to come, it's not going to compact the soil as badly, and to keep that wind from not causing as much pressure on this soil. So if there are any questions, you guys feel free to ask me questions about what I'm seeing. You can see over here, there's a radish right here. See, a radish, and then a bean, and then a squash. And then up inside here, I've got some cucumbers going in over here, cucumbers, things like that. These peppers are already eventually going to start to look better as less pressure and more opportunity. Like just that little bit of potato plant is creating a little bit less pressure.
I guess it's just
over here.
When as we drive, and if I didn't know more about what you're up to and why you're up to it, driving from Corpus Christi to Taft every day, there becomes a period of time when I cross the Harbor Bridge at home where I'm surrounded in farmland.
Yes.
And it just looks so notably different than the rows that you're showing me. It just, it's bare dirt with just those sprouts that are,
yeah. And the thing is that shift
no
is already,
weeds allowed.
As much as people might think that, that might be great for small farming, it's never going to change in agriculture. It's already begun to change. In fact, some of the things we've been listening to and that we've been talking about on the podcast, please check out our podcast at dinnertabletalks.com. Mondays is going to be really a little bit more political discussion as it relates to climate change and agriculture, industrial, corporate agriculture, and small-scale agriculture, and how it's affecting us, really. But we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this regenerative concept and the fact that there's even an increase just in the last 10 years of industrial and corporate farming that is beginning to move into some regenerative agriculture techniques. GM actually has...
General Foods.
Sorry, I knew that as soon as I said it. General Foods has actually already purchased 10 million or transitioned...
1 million.
1 million, thank you for helping with that. Has transitioned 1 million acres of production farmland into regenerative. So they're trying it. Now, we're also talking about there's 800 million acres of farmland in the United States, right? But the thing is that there's just in the 10 years that it has become a discussion, and I'll tell you, I started hearing about it in about 2010, 2011 when I was going to Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association and going and hearing, the first being in the room with some of these people that are now big names, Gabe Brown, Ray Archuleta, and things like that, where I'm in a small room full of people, and there are a few Texas soil scientists there that are learning and teaching healthy soil, healthy body, healthy lot, that kind of concept. That was just in the last 10 years. We are beginning to see some shifts in that direction, and I think you'll see more and more of that. But what we can do as consumers and a small scale is actually be in participation with it to understand that this is one of the most important things we can do across the board for our health of our own bodies, to feed ourselves nutrient-dense foods and to be protective of the land, the water cycle. We talked last week on Monday about the specifics of why regenerative agriculture is important, specifically related to climate change and to the environment. And so having a better idea about why that's important is really good. So let me give you one last little look over here, and next week we'll talk another principle, but I did want to show you what some of the stuff we did. I mentioned that we had a chip drop yesterday from my friend Miller Navarro at M&S Tree Trimming Services. So find yourself a tree trimming friend. That's the thing I can say best for that. So then what we do as quickly as we can, while the temperatures are still mildly cool, we're only getting to those 90-degree days maybe once a week, right? We want to try to get that mulch in everywhere we can get it in.
Yeah, yesterday was a beautiful day to do that.
Yes, exactly. So, of course, we're going to be mulching around our trees, like you will mulch around that tree eventually. And that's armoring the soil. We're constantly covering the soil up.
You mind if I point out, we did this a year or 6 months ago. It looked like this in this row right here.
Yeah.
But it decomposes.
Yes, exactly.
It
and I use it. Yeah, and I use it and all kinds of stuff like that.
So now this is that time of year to armor what you're talking about, this soil with the new mulch.
Yes. And again, all your trees, look, make sure that right now is the time. Go in and do a nice cleanup, weed it all around them, let that grass just lay down, and then go in and put a nice layer of mulch all around your trees.
This fig tree will look like this before the end of the day.
This is the kind of stuff that you start doing in November, and you can do it all the way through April, and then you want to stop doing it at that point. And then, okay, so here's another thing about, and we're going to talk in the future more about disturbance of soil and stuff like that. But Joe came and brought in soil. We didn't till these spots. We brought material in, and then I plant the stuff as quickly as I can. I got it planted with some beans or something that's going to grow up the side here. I've got lettuce, and then I've got tomatoes and peppers that are already starting to produce. And then we went in and brought in this mulch, and then we covered the mulch. Now you can see on that edge over there where it was mulched in the wintertime before the freeze.
I haven't gone there yet.
It's already flat again, and now we're bringing in more mulch on this side.
Right.
And as we add in a little bit more length to these rows out here, same thing, bring in some materials and build it up. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm planting in any flowers. You can buy pretty flowers from the nursery. Let them seed out. Celosia is a great example for that. You can grow the tall celosia. You can see that I've got a lot of sunflowers still growing in this garden, even though they're not all like forever. I'm taking a lot of them out. I'm weeding them out when I need to get in there and get out of that. But we're just coming in. And not only is it good armor for the soil, but it also is aesthetically pleasing. It's just as important to do the exact same thing on the floor of your animals' beds, where you have animals coming in and where you're bringing animals. And we're going to talk about animals as one of the principles as well. But if you want to have healthy animals that don't deal with a lot of ticks and fleas and mites and things like that, and you also want to make sure that they're getting access to more protein, especially during the wintertime and things like that, putting a layer and armoring the floor of your beds with the same type of stuff. Now, you're not going to be able to keep things growing and alive in there, but we bring in trimmings from our trees and drop that stuff. Joe did the trimming of the mesquite tree yesterday.
Yeah, I just dropped it wherever it fell, and some of the larger branches I used a hedge clipper to break apart so that they could decompose a little faster and not be tripping hazards.
You can see you were probably had a little bit of a muddy mess going on back there.
No, I just intended on between yesterday and today to bring a lot of mulch into the coop, so it got to the point when I was doing this project of every other wheelbarrow full just going ahead and dropping in the chickens. You can't see behind the coop, but it's all new mulch back there.
Yes, and then so you can see all of that, and then of course we brought one of the bags of the live oak leaves because they like that. That's something for them to play around on. Mm-hmm. We bring in these trimmings over here that we just leave down. There's also lots of safety reasons that that's good, but it's also going to create life, and things are going to hide underneath there that they can get a hold of and eat.
There's 2 years of old Christmas trees in that pile.
There you go. And so, but we're creating armor, we're creating compost. Over here, I bring in all my buckets of greens from the gardens because even though I mulch in place and drop that stuff down, I always bring buckets of stuff over from them whenever I'm doing my weeding, and I drop that in for them into this compost pile area that I'm making. And then even our rabbits being inside there, all of their manure they're dropping in is dropping it all into a place that's creating more of a armor, because a lot of times if you see people's chicken runs, it's going to be hard, flat, stinky. Some people put in sand, although I wouldn't encourage that because sand encourages fleas and mites and ticks and things like that. But you see a lot of times when people don't do anything about their chicken runs, the ammonia from their poop is going to destroy the soil. Their constant pooping on the soil is going to destroy. They're scratching around in it. Eventually they can't even scratch around it anymore, hardly, because it's so hard and compacted. So what you're trying to do is create, and our chickens can go around and make dust baths anywhere they want to. We don't have to make a special dust bath area. I see them dust bathing underneath the tree and over in all these different areas. They're hanging out and you can see them scratching around right now. It's very easy for them to scratch around in the soil down there. And the reason is because we've created it's not compacted. It's actually got that nice armor on it. Mm-hmm. And they've always got life. If there's rain that comes, then little insects and things like that are going to hatch, and they've got new little caterpillars, new little grubs, all that stuff that'll come up.
If you have chickens in a run, they're going to take it down to dirt. If it is bare dirt, you're going to have a mud problem when it rains, and you're going to have zero biodiversity for them to be able to find. I found from the very beginning that adding a thick layer of mulch and keeping it there creates a biodiversity that they can scratch around in and find little food and treats and roaches and...
Yes. Okay, and one last thing. A lot of times when people have low spots in their yard, like when we moved in here in September of 21, we had just done renovation on this side of the house, cut out some trees and things like that. And we had a lot of low spots. We actually still have, whenever I flood my gardens, or whenever we get the flood rains that come usually at some point. We're going to get flood rains here in the spring, and then we'll get flood rains likely definitely in the fall too. Water still settles back here, almost like marshland even.
Yeah, and in very specific spots.
Yes. And so what we do, instead of just bringing in, now if you think about just bringing in some topsoil, which most of the topsoil you're going to get access to around here these days is going to be pretty much clay. It's going to be a lot of clay. You bring in the topsoil, and then you end up with having just this heavy compacted soil, and all it does is run water to another place. Rather, instead, you want to keep life in your yard, in your grass. So what we've done is gone in and put lots of mulch around.
Yeah, here's a very good spot. And what I found is that while that mulch decomposes and thins down again, I'm not seeing the water problem there the next year, because the mulch itself becomes a sponge. This was the biggest problem.
Lake.
Yeah.
And then eventually what will happen is that the grass will start to grow over the top of it, just like it did over here. The first thing we did was just create a walkway, because we couldn't even walk in our backyard because it was so full of water when we first moved in, because we moved in September. It was the flooding rains, and we've just done a bunch of renovation, so there was no grass out here. So what we did was we actually built ourselves walk paths
with the mulch,
and now we've got grass that grows. And so after the floods come through again, we'll see the low spots again, and then we'll go ahead and armor the soil, and that's going to create the grass and the life in the soil that you want to create. If you want a future place to put your garden, another garden, or create another space for a garden, a way to clean up, put some pots down, is just go ahead and put a nice layer of mulch down. Eventually that's going to turn that into some nice topsoil, and then you can plant your perennial plants down inside that and turn it into another little garden place. I'm actually kind of ready to do that before the end of April. I want to put some plants.
Nice. What I did here was just take the weed eater and take it all the way down to dirt as much as I could, and then brought in 8 inches of mulch. The mesquite tree looked a lot different when I did that.
Yeah,
there was a big wind event that kicked the mesquite tree over, and now the couple of chickens that like to fly over the fence and look at our backyard, they love to come over here, and I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, and that's one thing, we wanted to make sure that the tree had the best chance to absorb the water, because water holds over here. This is one of those low spots where you end up with a bunch of water over here. But we wanted to make sure that this tree had a chance to, we propped it up, we trimmed it up, and now it's growing again. You can see that it's got life back on it again, right? So we want this tree to be as healthy as possible. Mesquite trees draw a lot of moisture out of the soil. So putting mulch around it is going to create a place where the water settles and holds right there and keeps health available for this tree that we want to be a healthy tree as well. So these are all different ways to armor your soil, and this is one of the 5 important principles for regenerative production, regenerative agriculture. I hope that we'll talk some more about that stuff in the future weeks as we make our way around the gardens through spring, and I hope you guys learned a lot today from that. Please don't forget that every Monday the farm is, most Mondays, I go on vacation from time to time, most Mondays the farm is open. I open the gates at 8 a.m., close them up in the afternoon. Right now they're closing up about 5 o'clock. As the summer starts to come and it gets hotter, I'll probably keep the gates open a little bit and maybe take a siesta in the middle of the day, something like that. But currently you can drop by. We're doing garden healing, which is really us just hanging out in the gardens, hanging out on the farm, going around and checking things out, doing a little bit of piddling in the garden, working in the garden if it makes sense, depending on who's there, which kids are there, if they've ever been there before, if it's their first time to the farm, whatever. And we spend some time in garden healing. That's usually from about 9 a.m. until noon. And at noon, we break for lunch. That's a BYO lunch situation, although I usually like to share whatever I have as well. And then we do a Course in Miracles study group from 1 and usually till about 2:30. So after that, about 2:30, we come back out for some garden healing and spend some time outside again. Sometimes, depending on who's here, we'll mix in some Qigong, maybe some meditation, maybe even some yoga in the future. All things we do on Mondays at the farm, and that's free and open to the public. If I've got any excess produce, eggs, anything like that, be sure to ask me, because that's where you could pick it up from me on a Monday at the farm. In addition to that, I am offering a special spring pricing for hands-on garden helping from me. I will actually come to your gardens and help you for 2 hours for $77. We're going to send out an email today to give you some more information about that. If you're not on my email list, go over to aislynncampbell.com and get on my email list. That way you'll be able to get that information regularly. April the 29th, I'm going to be hosting another one of my garden classes here on the farm. That's $44 a carload, and I spend about an hour and a half taking you around and showing you in person and answering all of your questions. Believe it or not, a lot of times those end up being private tours because we end up having one small family or a small group of people that come out for that kind of thing. So sign up for that today so that you can be a part of getting to come out. And then also know, I keep it really simple. If you want to come and have a private tour here at the farm, it costs $44 for an hour. So schedule that with me at any point in time. If you have any other questions,
For a carload.
For a carload, that's right. If you have any other questions, please just reach out to me. I'm very easy to get a hold of. I'm here to help. That's what I do. It's what I love. I like to produce food, and I like to teach people about how they can better produce food. And don't forget about our podcast, dinnertabletalks.com. The last 9 weeks have been really good. I think we'll have maybe one more week of regenerative agriculture, and then we'll move on to something else. Maybe we'll come up with something a little bit more light and fun about movies and art and things like that we like to talk about. But who knows what we're going to be talking about at the dinner table. It's always an interesting time. We'll see you all very soon. Have a wonderful week. I love you. Bye. Chicken butt.